Lina Davison sat at her desk long after most of the office had emptied. The soft hum of the city beyond the tall windows barely distracted her. Her fingers traced the edge of a blueprint she'd revised a dozen times, but her thoughts drifted elsewhere, toward a question she could no longer ignore. Will I ever grow here? Her sleek cornrows, pulled tight along her scalp and wrapped into a low bun, gave her an air of composure. But inside, frustration brewed. Her office, clean lines, earth tones, awards lined in orderly frames, felt more like a museum than a place where new ideas could live. Even her latest sketches, bold and ambitious, sat unacknowledged at the corner of her desk. Lina had played it safe at Everest Architect for too long, working twice as hard, speaking half as much, and watching as male colleagues rose past her on the corporate ladder. Peter looked up for the first time, a bland smile crossing his pale lips. Our firm is built on legacy clients, luxury developments. We don't chase trends, we set standards. And why can't both exist, excellence and equity? He folded the folder shut with a practiced grace. Because one pays, Lina, the other doesn't. There it was, the same ceiling, freshly repainted, still unbreakable. I appreciate your passion, he added, already reaching for his coffee. But this just isn't aligned with the firm's vision. We have to be selective about where we invest our time. Lina stood slowly. Her throat burned, but she kept her face calm, controlled. Selective, she repeated. Understood. She left the office with the same folder clutched tightly in her hand, the edges now soft from her grip. The hallway felt colder than when she'd walked in. Or maybe she just saw it differently now. Each closed door, another quiet no. Back at her desk, she sat down without taking off her coat. She had done everything right. She had stayed late, stayed polite, stayed ambitious without being threatening. And still, they saw her only as capable, not visionary. Pretty enough for photo ops, not enough for power plays. Her days fell on the original sketch pinned to her wall. The twin towers, one gleaming with glass and copper, the other, grounded in brick and vertical gardens, stood proud. United by an elevated park that stretched like a green ribbon between them. Because one pays, Lina. But what if someone else believed in both? She opened her laptop and began drafting a private note. She wasn't sure to whom. Maybe a contact she'd met at a recent design conference. Maybe no one in particular. But the words came easily. Looking for a firm that values both innovation and impact. Experience in residential, commercial, and urban redevelopment. Ready to build something that lasts. She hit save. The night stretched on, but Lina no longer felt tired. She felt ready. It had been 3 days since Lina's proposal was rejected. 3 days of polite smiles from colleagues who hadn't read her deck. Of tight-lipped encouragements that felt like empty condolences. The email she sent out, short, calculated, professional, had only garnered a few vague replies. But she had promised herself she wouldn't stop. Friday afternoon arrived with a gray drizzle falling outside the Everest Architect windows. Lina was sketching over one of the firm's luxury high-rise plans when her phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Midtown Mixer, 6 p.m., RSVP'd yes. She had nearly forgotten about the invitation, an architecture industry social hosted at a boutique hotel downtown. She considered skipping it. But then again, she needed to be seen, even if she felt invisible. 2 hours later, Lina stood beneath dim gold lighting in a glass-ceilinged lounge, a flute of champagne in hand. Conversations buzzed around her, sustainability trends, building permits, who won the latest design award. She moved between groups with ease, smiling, exchanging cards, holding back the sting of recent disappointment. Then, someone touched her elbow. "You're Lina Davison, right?" She turned to see a woman, mid-30s, box braids pulled into a tall bun, badge reading, Eliza T., Talent. Porter Architectural Group. Lina nodded cautiously. "I am." I saw your feature last year in Urban Blueprint. The piece about reclaiming community spaces. Beautiful work. Thank you, Lina said, surprised. I've followed your work since then. Tell me, Eliza continued, lowering her voice, are you still with Everest? For now, Lina replied, watching the woman's expression closely. Eliza smiled. I'm asking because our firm is expanding a new hybrid portfolio, luxury and equitable housing models under one umbrella. It's early, and we're being quiet about it, but your name came up. You'd be a powerful fit. Lina's heart did a cautious somersault. Porter Group isn't exactly known for community projects. Not yet, Eliza said, eyes gleaming. But that's why we need visionaries, people like you. If you're interested, I can arrange a conversation. Lina hesitated, but something in her shifted. Hope didn't feel so foolish now. Set it up, she said. 3 days later, Lina walked into the gleaming glass headquarters of Porter Architectural Group. The building itself was a statement. Sleek steel lines and brutalist elegance softened with sculpted gardens and gallery-level interior lighting. Lina felt her heels echo on the marble as she passed reception. She had only just signed in when a suited man approached her. Miss Davison. Yes? Mr. Porter would like to see you. Now. A flicker of confusion passed her face. I thought I was meeting with someone from acquisitions. The man didn't blink. He asked for you specifically. This way. She followed him into an elevator lined with smoked glass, rising steadily toward the top floor. Then the doors opened. Marco Porter's office was everything she'd imagined. Sharp lines, dark lacquer, and a wall of angled glass that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. A single black orchid sat in a steel vase. The room was like him, elegant, cold, and unbothered by excess. He stood at the window when she entered. Tall, tailored charcoal suit, hands behind his back. Miss Davison, he said without turning, you caused quite a stir. She arched a brow. That wasn't my intention. He turned then, his eyes steel gray, his smirk subtle, too calculated to be warm. You could work anywhere. I've read your proposals. Why come here? Because I know where architecture is heading, she replied, and I want to be part of what leads it. You're not here for a title? I'm here to build, she said simply. He studied her, the silence stretching. Interesting. She couldn't tell if it was admiration or challenge in his tone. But she had faced worse, and survived. As she left the office, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. 2 hours after leaving the Porter office, Lina sat on her couch, heels kicked off. Fingers trembling slightly as she refreshed her inbox for the 5th time. It was there. Subject: Offer of employment, Porter Architectural Group. From Human Resources. She opened it slowly, reading every line twice. The terms were generous. Senior project architect, competitive pay, autonomy over 2 major projects, one commercial high-rise, the other a community housing model still in conceptual phase. The very blueprint she had been denied at Everest. Her chest tightened, not from doubt, but from the strange steady thrum of possibility becoming reality. She signed. The following Monday, Lina entered Porter's Human Resources Department to finalize paperwork. The head of HR, Miriam Langley, a polished woman in her 50s, with sleek silver hair and rectangular glasses, looked over the folder before peering up with faint surprise. I have to admit, this one caught me off guard, Miriam said, gesturing toward Lina's file. Most executive-level hires go through committee review, but Mr. Porter signed off on yours directly. Lina tilted her head. Is that unusual? Extremely. Miriam offered a tight smile, as if still trying to decode the reason herself. But then again, you come with an impressive portfolio. Seems someone upstairs wanted to make sure we didn't miss the opportunity. Lina kept her expression unreadable. She didn't know what game Marco Porter was playing, or if it was even a game, but she knew how to keep her guard up. Then I guess I'll just have to prove them right. Over the next 2 weeks, Lina settled into her new office, mid-sized, minimalist, with a corner view of the city and a drafting table. That made her heart sing. Her dual project responsibilities were officially confirmed: the Nova Point Luxury Tower and the Hollingsworth Green Housing Project, both still in early stages. She poured herself into the work. Mornings began with research, afternoons with modeling, evenings with concept renders that stretched into the glow of night. Her vision came alive, slowly but surely: sustainable materials, intentional community spaces, seamless transitions between opulence and necessity. And she began to notice something. Marco. First, it was a brief appearance during her project orientation. His tall frame watching from the doorway, offering no more than a nod before disappearing. Then, it was the occasional presence during project meetings he wasn't required to attend. No direct questions, no interruptions, just silence and observation, his steel-gray eyes fixed squarely on her. It escalated subtly. A forwarded email asking for her opinion on material usage, a calendar invitation, walkthrough on Hollingsworth site, with his name attached. A note left on her desk in that same crisp handwriting: your mixed-use podium design. Unconventional, refreshing, expanded. Lina wasn't used to this kind of attention from executives. At Everest, her suggestions were usually filtered through middle managers or buried entirely. But here, Marco was watching. Closely, quietly, deliberately. At times, she could feel the weight of his gaze during presentations. Not leering, assessing, measuring. Like she was a structure in progress, and he wasn't sure whether to admire or challenge the lines she was drawing. She asked her colleague Natalie one afternoon, half joking, "Does Mr. Porter attend everyone's floor plan reviews?" Natalie blinked. "Marco, no. I've been here 4 years and seen him twice outside of executive briefings." Lina nodded slowly, masking her reaction. Interesting. Whatever the reason, she knew one thing: she had Marco's attention. And in this city, at this firm, attention could either build you up or take you down. And Lina Davison didn't plan to crumble. By the 3rd week at Porter Architectural Group, Lina had memorized the way the light hit her office window at 9:17 a.m. and the way the building groaned during late-night storms. She thrived on the rhythm. Problem-solving in the morning, site visits by mid-afternoon, revisions and renderings into the night. But what she hadn't gotten used to Marco Porter's presence. It started subtly. An email forwarded from his executive assistant about a material supplier. A comment dropped during a design review. "Miss Davison's approach to modular symmetry is worth modeling." She should have been flattered. And she was. But there was more. During a walkthrough of the Hollingsworth site, Lina spotted him across the construction line. His signature charcoal coat flapping in the wind, a hard hat nestled loosely in his hand. He didn't approach, just watched. At first, she dismissed it. CEOs dropped in, right? But then he showed up at a planning session meant only for her team and the engineering consultants. No explanation, no announcement. He simply pulled out a chair beside her and reviewed her presentation with that same unreadable expression. Afterward, she confronted him near the elevator. "Was there something wrong with the plans?" she asked. Marco turned slowly, lips curling into that frozen smirk she was beginning to understand was his version of amusement. "Not at all. I just find your process instructive." "Instructive?" she repeated, arms folded. He leaned closer, the scent of his cologne, cool metal, sharp woods, brushing her senses like a challenge. "You think in layers. Not many people do. I like watching that." Lina's pulse quickened. She held his gaze, unwilling to back down. "Is that standard protocol for CEOs around here?" "No," he said simply, "but you're not standard." He stepped into the elevator and left her standing alone, spine straight, mind spinning. Later that week, during a quiet moment in the break room, Lina sat across from her colleague Natalie, nursing a lukewarm coffee. Natalie leaned in, eyes sparkling. "So, what's it like being the favorite?" Lina frowned. What are you talking about? Come on, Natalie said with a laugh. Marco shows up at your meetings. I saw him personally mark up one of your boards. He hasn't done that since the Valencia Tower pitch, 3 years ago. I'm just doing my job, Lina said, keeping her tone light, though unease crept into her chest. Natalie shrugged. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. But Lina wasn't so sure. Was it admiration? Control? Curiosity? Marco Porter wasn't like the other architects she'd worked with. He didn't flirt. He didn't flatter. He studied. And she could feel it. In every pause, every glance, a pull that was beginning to feel dangerously personal. Back in her office, she opened the next draft of the Hollingsworth design. Whatever Marco's motives were, she had work to do, and the only line she could afford to blur was the one between steel and stone, not the one between her future and a man with a frozen smirk and city lights in his eyes. The boardroom at Porter Architectural Group gleamed with power. Glass walls, matte black chairs, a sculptural chandelier casting soft shadows across the grain-polished table. Lina entered quietly, portfolio in hand. The meeting was intended to align key departments on the Nova Point luxury tower, a routine briefing. But today, the room wasn't routine. Sitting confidently beside Marco was a woman Lina didn't recognize, statuesque, with burnished copper curls pinned back in a high French twist, and a burgundy power dress tailored to perfection. Her lipstick matched her heels, expensive, intentional, bold. Across from her sat Daniel Browning, COO of the firm, sleeves slightly rolled, watch glinting just enough to signal quiet wealth. His energy was less composed than Marco's, eager, calculating, like he was always 3 moves ahead. As Marco introduced Lina to the room, Daniel's gaze lingered on her. So, you're the one shaking up the old bones of this place, he said smoothly. I'm just trying to build what matters, Lina replied without hesitation. Daniel's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's what Marco used to say before he discovered profit margins. Lina noted the tension, subtle but layered. There was something territorial in Daniel's tone. And this, Marco added, turning toward the poised stranger, is Carol Bridges. She represents Bridges Global Holdings. Her family owns several commercial lots in Midtown. We're in early talks to partner on future projects. Carol extended a manicured hand to Lina. I've heard your name around here. You're quite the rising star. Trying to earn my space, Lina said carefully, meeting her handshake with professional firmness. Carol smiled, just wide enough to show teeth. Well, enjoy it while you have it. The words were playful, but the message was clear. Throughout the meeting, Carol interjected more than necessary, casually undermining elements of the design Lina had presented. Do high-end clients even care about rooftop gardens anymore? She asked, twirling her pen. Feels very altruistic. Lina didn't flinch. Clients care about what makes them feel ahead of the curve. Sustainability isn't charity, it's luxury with conscience. Marco leaned back, watching the exchange without comment. But Daniel's eyes shifted between the two women with increasing discomfort. After the meeting, as Lina gathered her notes, she felt Daniel approach. You handled yourself well in there, he said. Thanks. Though, I'd keep an eye on Carol. She's deeply invested in this firm's future. Lina turned to him. Is that a warning or advice? He chuckled, slow and knowing. Both. She narrowed her eyes. Why do I get the feeling you're not thrilled I'm here? Daniel shrugged, his voice dipped in polite venom. Because you've been here less than a month, and Marco's already orbiting your desk like a satellite. That tends to disrupt gravitational balance. Lina's expression stayed neutral. I didn't ask for his attention. No, but you've got it. And with that, he left. Later that evening, Marco stood in his private office, watching the lights scatter across the city skyline. Daniel joined him, sipping whiskey. You're playing a dangerous game, Daniel said. Marco didn't look away. What game? Don't insult me. Carol's a strategic alliance. Her father could bring in hundreds of millions in property contracts. And Lina could redefine the soul of this firm. Daniel scoffed. That won't buy you Midtown. Marco finally turned. Maybe not, but it might buy us something better. Daniel's jaw flexed. Don't let fascination make you a fool. Marco didn't answer. But across the city, Lina worked late again, unaware of just how many conversations she'd stirred. How many men were trying to draw the lines of her future without asking if she'd already chosen her own. It began with an email, then another, then a sudden appearance in a planning meeting. Lina stared at the subject line on her screen. Materials for Nova Point Interiors, feedback from C. Bridges. Carol Bridges had attached a list of preferred design vendors, none of whom aligned with the aesthetic or sustainable direction Lina's team had mapped out. The tone was friendly, even polite, but Lina saw it clearly for what it was, a boundary line being tested. She hit reply, fingers calm, voice sharper. Thanks for your thoughts, Carol. My team has already sourced LEED-compliant vendors per the client brief. Unless there's been a directive change, we'll proceed as approved. Best, Lina Davison. The response came within the hour. No text, just a thumbs-up emoji. The next day, Carol walked into Lina's design meeting 10 minutes late, dressed in all white, structured blazer, silken slacks, oversized pearl earrings that caught every bit of light. She didn't wait to be invited to the table. "Oh, don't mind me," she said with a breezy smile. "I just wanted to observe, get a feel for how things flow under new leadership." Lina's eyes didn't flicker. "Of course," she said coolly. "Just know this isn't a spectator sport. If you're here, you're contributing. Otherwise, I suggest the client lounge." There was a moment of stunned silence. Carol's smile wavered, but only for a second. "I'm sure I'll find my way." She stayed the entire meeting, asking unnecessary questions, making offhand suggestions that derailed discussion. Afterward, one of Lina's junior architects muttered under his breath, "Does she even work here?" Lina said nothing, but her jaw ached from how hard she was clenching it. 2 days later, Lina entered the executive elevator, only to find Carol already inside, her reflection perfect in the mirrored walls. "Heading up?" Carol asked, as if they were old friends. Lina pressed the button for the top floor. Carol glanced at her, eyes like polished glass. "You're talented. I see why Marco is intrigued. I'm here to do my job. If you have concerns, feel free to take them to the board." Carol's smile curled like ribbon. "Oh, this isn't about the job, dear. This is about presence. Marco may appreciate your voice, but men like him marry power. Legacy. That's me." Lina let the words hang between them. Her pulse drummed, but her face stayed cool. "Then I guess we'll see what kind of legacy he's really after." That evening, Marco found Lina in one of the firm's rooftop lounges, reviewing renderings of the Hollingsworth project. He approached quietly, hands in his coat pockets. "You've been quiet." Lina didn't look up. "I've been busy. I heard about the meeting. Carol shouldn't have shown up." "She's not the problem," Lina replied, finally turning to him. "The problem is that I'm doing my job, and it keeps getting politicized." Marco studied her face, the sharp lines, the fierce elegance that never cracked. "Do you want me to intervene?" "No," she said. "I want you to let me handle it." He nodded once. "Then I'll stay out of your way." But he didn't leave. The city shimmered behind them, distant and alive. Marco stood beside her, silent. Lina closed her laptop. "If this gets any messier, I walk. I didn't come here to play palace games." His voice dropped. "I didn't bring you here for that." "Then what did you bring me for?" He hesitated, but didn't answer. Lynn said goodnight and walked away. The restaurant Marco chose was sleek and understated. Nestled on the top floor of a boutique hotel with a panoramic view of the skyline, white linen, steel cutlery, soft jazz humming low beneath the hum of business chatter. Lina arrived on time, wearing a graphite gray sheath dress, heels sharp enough to puncture ego. She'd been cautious about this lunch. Marco had called it a strategy session, but the invitation had arrived through his personal assistant, not a project manager. She'd decided to go, but she wasn't going to make it easy. Marco stood as she approached their table, ever the gentleman. Dark suit, open collar, no tie. Less CEO, more man trying to seem casual. She didn't sit until he gestured with that practiced, minimal motion of his hand. "I appreciate you coming," he said. "I assumed this was about Nova Point updates," Lina replied, unfolding her napkin slowly. "It is," he said. Then, after a pause, "And it isn't." Before she could reply, the maitre d' appeared beside the table. "Mr. Porter, Ms. Bridges and Mr. Browning are joining you." Lina's spine went stiff. "What?" Marco's brows furrowed. "I didn't ask, but it was too late." Carol and Daniel were already striding over, like they owned the air between each step. Carol, in an emerald dress that clung like paint, leaned down to air-kiss Marco on the cheek. "Hope we're not interrupting anything." Daniel gave Lina a smirk that didn't hide his satisfaction. "Just thought we'd make it a party." The four of them sat, and what had been a business lunch quickly turned into a performance. Carol dominated the conversation, looping everything back to her father's influence and her shared vision for the firm's future. Daniel prodded at Lina's designs with fake compliments, bold for someone so new, while Marco remained largely silent, his jaw tight, his gaze flickering toward Lina more often than not. Finally, Lina had enough. She set down her fork, wiped her mouth, and folded her hands calmly on the table. "You know what?" she said, voice steady and low. "I'm not doing this." Carol blinked. "Doing what?" Lina looked at each of them. "This game, the power plays, the staged encounters. Carol, Marco's not my type, and I have no interest in fighting for something I don't even want." Carol's smile thinned. "Then what do you want?" "My job," Lina replied. "To design, to lead, to be excellent. That's it. So, unless you're handing me blueprints, I don't need your input." She turned to Daniel. "And you can relax. If your concern is company image or Marco's distractions, congratulations, you win." Then, finally, she looked at Marco. "You said you brought me here to build, but every time I make progress, something like this happens. If you're serious about what I bring to the table, then prove it by stepping away from the table." Marco opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a raise of her hand. "No more gestures, no more lingering. You're my boss. Act like it." Daniel, barely concealing his satisfaction, leaned back with a slow sip of water. "Well said." Lina stood, her chair scraping gently against the marble floor. She looked down at the table. 3 people playing different games, none of them with rules she respected. "I'm taking the rest of the day off." "Lina," Marco began. "No." Her voice was quiet, but firm. "You had your chance to handle this differently." She didn't look back as she walked out of the restaurant, her heels echoing off the walls. Outside, the city was bright and busy, but Lina didn't care. She hailed a cab and gave her address. By the time she reached her apartment, kicked off her shoes, and dropped her bag onto the kitchen counter, the adrenaline had worn off. She wasn't angry at Marco, or Carol, or even Daniel. Not entirely. She was angry that she had to keep proving she wasn't there to be chosen. She was there to create, and she would, with or without them. 3 weeks passed. True to her request, Marco Porter kept his distance. No emails, no walkthroughs, no quiet drop-ins. Meetings were handled by department heads, and every interaction between them was filtered through layers of protocol. It was what Lina asked for: professionalism, space, clarity. But it didn't feel like victory. Each night, as she worked late refining elevations and adjusting project budgets, the silence from him became another kind of noise, loud in its absence, persistent in its weight. Tonight, as the sky darkened and thunder cracked low across the skyline, Lina remained at her desk, lost in revisions. Everyone else had cleared out hours ago. Rain began to splatter against the tall windows, streaking the glass like jagged veins of light. She didn't hear the office door open behind her. "Still at it?" came a voice, calm, low, familiar. Lina turned, startled. Marco stood in the doorway, coat damp from the rain, hair tousled. For once, the ever-controlled CEO looked almost human. She closed her laptop slowly. "Didn't think you noticed?" "I noticed everything," he said, "especially your silence." She didn't answer. "I owe you an apology," he added, stepping fully into the office. "The lunch was never supposed to go that way. I let my guard down. I let Daniel interfere, and I let Carol walk into something she had no right to." Lina studied him. "So why now?" "Because it's storming," he said with a small, almost sheepish smile. "And I saw your light still on." He paused, glancing out the window. "Let me drive you home, please." Reluctantly, she agreed. The car was warm, quiet. The rain pounded against the windshield as the city blurred in grays and golds. Neither of them spoke until they hit her street. "I meant what I said before," Marco said, not turning the engine off. "You're not just another architect. You changed the rhythm of this place, of me." She looked at him, unsure what to say. "I care about you, Lina, deeply. But I also meant it when I said I'd respect your space." She exhaled slowly, tension loosening with the sound. "Then respect this," she said, her voice gentler than before. "Let it be real, or let it be done." He nodded once. "I'll wait for real." Late nights at Porter Architectural Group had become less lonely. It started with a simple project draft. The firm was preparing a high-stakes proposal for a new civic design initiative, public libraries redesigned as mixed-use innovation hubs, and Marco had unexpectedly asked Lina to take the lead. They began meeting after hours in the main design lab, sprawled across concept boards, running fingers over material swatches, sketching ideas over coffee and silence. Marco kept his distance, physically, but emotionally, he was everywhere, leaning just close enough to read a detail over her shoulder, offering thoughtful, exacting feedback that never diminished her voice. And she, despite herself, had begun to soften. They didn't speak about what had happened in the car. They didn't need to. The energy was back, charged, unspoken, real. As the annual winter gala approached, invitations circled the office like glittering chains. The event, a grand affair hosted by top firms and city officials, was both a celebration and a branding spectacle. Lina tried to avoid it entirely. She drafted emails with polite declines, cited workload, even suggested she could attend virtually, until Marco's assistant gently informed her that she was expected to present the Porter Group's award-nominated Nova Point model live. Lina sighed, then nodded. "Fine, but I won't stay long." The night of the gala, she wore a gown of deep bronze satin that shimmered like polished stone against her skin. Her cornrows were pulled into an elegant wrap. She looked like sculpture, fluid, bold, and unbreakable. But as she stepped into the ballroom, she felt like a target. Eyes turned. Conversations paused. Marco, dressed in sharp black with a dark satin tie, noticed her from across the room. And in that moment, there was only her. Until Carol made herself known. "Stunning," Carol said, appearing beside her with a champagne flute and a rehearsed smile. "I almost didn't recognize you. You queen up so well." Lina didn't respond. "You know," Carol continued, voice honeyed with venom, "I used to worry about you. All that talent and no pedigree. But then I realized, Marco always circles back to what he knows. His world, his people. You're just a novelty." Lina's chest burned, but her expression didn't falter. Carol leaned closer. "You'll never be one of us, and eventually he'll tire of pretending otherwise." The words hit harder than they should have. Maybe because part of her feared they were true. Lina turned, walking out before she said something she couldn't take back. Outside, the air was crisp, the street quiet. Rain had passed earlier, leaving the pavements slick, reflecting streetlights like golden shards. Lina walked with no destination, heels clicking in rhythm with her heartbeat. She didn't hear him approach, but she knew he would. "Lina," Marco said behind her. She stopped but didn't turn around. "Don't." He stepped closer anyway, not touching her, just standing at her side. "This," she said softly, staring at the reflection of the city beneath her feet, "feels like something." He didn't answer with words. He stepped in front of her, searching her face for permission. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Slow, certain, reverent. And for a moment, a city disappeared. No Carol, no Daniel, no politics. Just breath and silence and the quiet truth blooming between them. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. They didn't have to. Lina backed up and walked away. The Monday after the gala, whispers rippled through the upper floors of Porter Architectural Group like wind under closed doors. Some spoke of Lina's Nova Point presentation, which had received a rare standing ovation. Others buzzed about her and the Marco disappearing for nearly half an hour that night. Daniel Browning, however, wasn't interested in gossip. He was interested in leverage. From the moment he saw Marco follow Lina out of the ballroom, jaw tight, eyes soft, he knew. This wasn't infatuation. This wasn't a moment. This was dangerous. He paced in his office, the city skyline yawning out behind him, phone pressed to his ear. "I need a transfer initiated for Lina Davison. Internal reallocation. Houston branch. Effective immediately." The HR liaison on the other end hesitated. "But there's no documentation, no performance issues. This would need Marco's." "I'll get his approval," Daniel interrupted, voice cool. "Just start the draft." He hung up, stared out at the steel and light below. Lina was talented, no question. But talent meant nothing if it compromised the future. And Carol Bridges was the future. Lina arrived at work Tuesday morning to find an envelope on her desk. Notice of internal transition, Porter Group, Houston. She blinked at first. She thought it was a mistake. She skimmed the letter again. Her project notes were still on the table, her coffee still warm. This couldn't be real. She marched straight to HR, stormed past the front desk, and into Miriam Langley's office. "Miriam, what the hell is this?" Miriam looked up from her monitor, confused, then concerned. "Lina, I assumed this came directly from Marco or Daniel." "It didn't," Lina said. "I would have heard it from them. This was slipped on my desk like a passive-aggressive memo." Miriam sighed, turning to her screen. "Give me a moment." She typed rapidly, scrolling through internal notes. Her brow furrowed. The request came from Daniel, and Marco's approval is pending. It hasn't been signed off yet. Then it's not final. Not yet. Lina exhaled sharply, but the fire in her chest didn't die. It turned sharper, colder. "I want a meeting with Marco today." Marco was reviewing construction documents in his glass-walled office when Lina arrived, her presence cutting through the calm like a blade. He looked up, then immediately stood when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" She held up the letter. "You tell me." He read the heading, and his eyes darkened. "I didn't authorize this." "Well, someone did," she snapped, "and they tried to do it behind your back." Marco's jaw clenched. "Daniel, I came here to build, Marco, not to be quietly erased because I don't fit someone else's narrative." He walked to his phone, dialed fast. "Get Daniel in here, now." Lina folded her arms, standing tall as the tension in the room thickened. "Do you still want me here?" she asked quietly. Marco looked at her, everything raw and visible in his face now. "I want you here, more than I can put into words." Before she could respond, the office door opened, and Daniel stepped in, mask firmly in place. "You wanted to see me?" Marco held up the transfer letter. "What the hell is this?" Daniel didn't blink. "A necessary precaution. She's compromised your judgment." You don't get to decide that. I do if it affects the firm, Daniel replied coolly. Carol's father pulled 2 property bids last week. He's watching how you move. He's watching her. Lina stared at him. So you want to ship me off to Houston because Carol's feelings are hurt? Daniel's smile was thin. I want to protect the company from chaos, from complication. Marco's voice dropped dangerously low. Don't ever move against someone under my roof again without my approval. Daniel met his gaze, but for once, he didn't challenge it. I hope you know what you're doing, he said, then turned and walked out. When the door shut, silence filled the room. Lina stood still, her body trembling from fury she refused to show. Marco reached for her hand, but she stepped back. I need air. He didn't stop her. But as she walked out, the look in her eyes said everything. The war had officially begun. The morning after the confrontation, Lina's office sat empty. No lights, no sketches on the walls, no late-night coffee mug, half full on her desk. Just a stillness that unnerved those who passed by, especially Marco. He stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, eyes trained on the closed door. She submitted the paperwork this morning. Miriam from HR had told him quietly. Unpaid leave. Indefinite. He hadn't tried to stop it. Not because he agreed, but because he understood. She had been right. He should have protected her from Daniel, from the system, from himself. Instead, he'd let it all spin out. And now she was gone. Lina spent the first few days at home in a strange sort of quiet. No site visits, no check-ins, no fake smiles during meetings where half the room dismissed her before she even spoke. She sat at her kitchen island, bare-faced, her sleek cornrows now pulled back with no thought of perfection. The sun spilled over her apartment floor, warm and defiant, as she sketched, not for anyone else, for herself. The shape of an open courtyard, a split-level community center, a rooftop co-op garden with suspended hammocks and recycled glass walls. Designs she had long ago buried under deadlines and politics began flowing back through her fingertips. She didn't regret walking away. She regretted giving her energy to a system that tried to fold her into something smaller than what she was. And Marco, he lingered in the back of her mind, his face at the gala, his voice in the car, the stormy look in his eyes when Daniel was exposed. He had said he cared, deeply, but sometimes caring wasn't enough. At the office, Marco was unraveling in a quieter way. He canceled meetings he didn't have the energy for, walked past Carol at an executive brunch without even acknowledging her greeting. He stopped replying to Daniel's texts entirely. Instead, he found himself standing in front of Lina's Hollingsworth model, late at night, touching the edges of the cardboard cutout buildings, tracing the community paths she had so lovingly designed. He could hear her voice again. Equity isn't an aesthetic, it's the foundation. She had been right about everything, and he had let his silence serve as complicity. The next morning, he made a call. 3 days later, Lina's phone buzzed. Marco Porter, voicemail. She hesitated before pressing play. Lina, I'm not calling to convince you to come back. Not yet. I just needed you to know something. You were right. I let power politics matter more than people. I let someone try to remove you like you were a threat, when you've been the most necessary force we've had in years. I saw your office this morning, and it felt like the heart of the firm left with you. If you never return, I'll understand, but I hope you do. Because this time, if you do, it's going to be on your terms. Not mine, not Daniel's, not Carol's, yours. I want to build something real, Lina, in every way that counts. The message ended. Lina sat in stillness, her chest tight. Her fingers brushed over her sketchbook again, this time over a new line forming, a new design, a new choice. The walls of Porter Architectural Group had never felt this tense. It started with a single forwarded email, An internal note mistakenly CC'd to Marco's executive assistant. The subject: Bridges proposal contingency. Inside was a paper trail, meetings, side conversations, and a confidential document that tied Daniel Browning directly to an unauthorized property negotiation with Carol Bridges' father. While still serving as COO, it was enough to burn the firm from the inside out. Marco stared at the screen in silence. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sabotage, coordinated, deliberate, and personal. He closed his laptop, called legal, and then sent one final calendar invitation. Subject: immediate termination meeting, Daniel Browning. Daniel didn't look surprised when he entered Marco's office. "I figured you'd call me in eventually," he said, smoothing his jacket. "The girl get to you?" Marco's gaze was steel. "No, the facts did." He slid the open file across the desk. "You used your position to secure outside leverage for personal gain. You tried to manipulate an executive partnership using my name, and you went behind my back to target a senior architect." Daniel leaned forward, eyes cold. "I was protecting the company." "No," Marco said quietly. "You were protecting your place in it." Daniel scoffed. "You're letting her win." "I'm not playing to win," Marco said. "I'm building something worth keeping." Security escorted Daniel out within the hour. The next morning, Porter Group buzzed with speculation. By noon, a new nameplate was being installed beside an empty glass-walled office. Lina Davison, lead design consultant. Her return was not loud. No speech, no ceremony, but her presence shifted the entire atmosphere. She walked through the building with calm command, her sleek cornrows styled high, her graphite gray blazer sharp against her toffee-brown skin. She made no eye contact with gossipers. She smiled once at Miriam in HR and headed straight to the newly reassigned Hollingsworth conference room. Her terms had been clear: creative autonomy, no interference from shareholders, direct authority over her projects, and equal voice on any future urban planning pitches. Marco had signed every clause without hesitation. Later that day, as he passed her open door, she called his name. He stopped. "You cleaned house," she said, arms crossed. "You deserved better," he replied. She tilted her head. "What now?" Marco exhaled slowly. "We rebuild, starting with trust." He stepped inside. "Lina, I never should have let it get that far. I thought I was protecting the firm, but really, I was just afraid." "Afraid of what?" she asked. "That if I let you in, everything would change." She stared at him, her voice low. "And now that it has, I don't want to go back." A silence settled between them. Lina walked to the window, looking down at the city she had once felt shut out from. "This office," she said, "it wasn't built for someone like me, but I plan to redesign it." He smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less." She turned to him, the corner of her mouth lifting. "You still want to build something real?" "With you," he said without hesitation. "On your terms." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away. The blueprint was hers. Every line, curve, and angle of the Bridge Living project bore the mark of Lina Davison. It was more than a design. It was a declaration that luxury and access could coexist, that people from different walks of life could live with dignity under the same sky. She stood at the front of the presentation room, confidently pitching to a crowd of city planners, developers, and media. Marco sat off to the side, not towering above her as CEO, but quietly backing her as a man who finally understood the power of standing with someone instead of in front of them. Lina's voice was strong, her words intentional. "The future of architecture is not in what we build alone," she said. "It's in what we make possible." This project will integrate sustainable luxury residences with affordable housing, connected by community gardens, art installations, shared transit hubs, and green tech. A city within a city, a home for all. When she finished, the room went still. Then applause erupted. The approval from the board came within a week. The Bridge Living project had been greenlit with full funding and city partnership, an unprecedented win. But the real shift wasn't in the applause or headlines. It was in how the office responded. Designers from other departments started asking to shadow her team. Interns requested mentorship. HR reached out to propose formalizing her project philosophy as part of the firm's values. Porter Architectural Group was changing, not just in tone, but in soul. And Marco, he kept his word. He didn't chase, he didn't hover, he supported. Late nights turned to collaborative again, her sketches across the table, his insight sharpening the structural angles. But the silences between them were different now. Charged, but not uncertain. One night, after hours of reviewing rooftop layouts and utility diagrams, Marco looked up from a draft and said, "You know, I've seen 100 seascapes in my life, but none like the one you draw." Lina paused, and one evening, as the sun dipped over the steel bones of what would one day be homes, he took her hand and said, "You've changed this firm, Lina." She looked at him, her voice warm but steady. "No, I just reminded it what it could be." He smiled. She didn't kiss him, not yet, but she didn't let go of his hand either. The Bridge Living project opened on a bright spring morning. Sunlight spilled over polished stone walkways, glinting off rooftop gardens and solar-paneled terraces. Children darted through splash fountains. A jazz trio played near the central plaza. Mixed-use housing units stood proudly side by side, one luxury, one affordable, but indistinguishable in design. They were equals. That was the point. Lina stood at the podium in a tailored black dress, her cornrows pulled into a regal twist, silver studs gleaming at her ears. The mayor had just finished his speech, giving way to a standing ovation. But when Lina stepped forward, the applause deepened, not out of formality, but reverence. She spoke with conviction. This project was not about architecture, it was about dignity. It was about building a future where inclusion isn't a trend, it's the blueprint. This, she gestured to the skyline rising behind her, is what happens when we stop asking what if and start asking why not. When she stepped down from the podium, Marco was waiting beside the stage. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't need to. Their smiles said everything. 2 weeks later, Marco called an executive meeting. This time, Lina wasn't a guest. She sat at the head of the table, beside Marco, her new nameplate in front of her, Lina Davison, Executive Partner, Urban Vision and Development. No more approvals, no more obstacles, no more silence. She spoke and the firm listened, not because of her title, but because she had become the voice that reshaped their entire ethos. Later, as the room emptied and the city lights flickered on outside the angled glass walls, Marco remained seated across from her. "Do you remember," he asked, "what you told me the first time we met? That I chose this firm because it builds what I believe in?" "No," he said, eyes softening. "You said you weren't afraid to prove it." She smiled, leaning back. "Guess I wasn't." He walked around the table to her side, quiet, steady. "I've built towers," he said, "landmarks, museums. But the only thing I want to build next is with you." She turned to him. Her voice dropped, gentle but firm. "No more mixed signals, no more rooms full of politics." He nodded. "Only rooms full of glass and light." She reached for his tie, straightening it with a slow, deliberate touch. "Good, then let's draft something new." He smiled. "Starting when?" "Now." He kissed her then, no longer slow and uncertain, but strong, real, and without fear. For the first time, there were no blurred lines between them. Just a shared vision, a shared rhythm, and a future they were finally designing together. 6 months later, a new plaque was unveiled in the heart of the Bridge Living Courtyard. The Davison Porter Innovation Center, a space for young architects to create, challenge, and imagine without limits. A group of students stood inside, sketchbooks in hand, watching a guest speaker walk to the front. It was Lina. She smiled, looking around at the future. "We don't just build structures," she told them. "We build choices, and I want each of you to know you have the right to design a world that includes you." In the back of the room, Marco leaned against the door frame, hands in his pockets, smiling like he'd already seen the next blueprint. And this time, it was hers. The end. Hope you enjoyed this story by Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow by likes, shares, and subscribe. Thank you.